Welcome to another episode of Follow the Brand TV. I am your host, Grant McGaugh, CEO of 5-Star BDM, a 5-star personal brand and business development company. I want to take you on a journey through another deep dive into the world of personal branding and business development using compelling personal stories, business conversations, and tips to improve your brand. By listening to the Follow the Brand TV series, you will differentiate yourself from the competition and build trust with prospective clients and employers. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Make it one that will set you apart, build confidence, and reflect who you are. Building your 5-star personal brand is a great way to improve your skills and knowledge. If you have any questions for me or any of my guests, please email me at grant.mcgaugh@5starbdm.com. Now, let's begin with our next episode on the Follow the Brand TV. Hello, everyone. Good evening, good night, good morning, depending on where you're located. Tonight, I'm super happy. I get an opportunity to talk to my audience that's primarily healthcare executives, information technology people that have been in the world of healthcare and actually saving lives for a long time. And what's top of mind right now is a lot of digital transformation. We're talking about innovation. How can we innovate in a $1 trillion economy of healthcare that is riddled with inefficiencies? We have somebody tonight, a 20-plus year veteran who has been on the leading edge when it comes to thought leadership around the healthcare industry, strategy, and innovation. He talks to audiences all over the world. I want to bring you tonight the story of Nicholas Webb. So before we bring him up, we're going to play a little clip, give you a little breath and understanding who Nicholas Webb is, and then we're going to have an in-depth conversation. Thank you very much.
There's a lot of value in connectivity, and we're going to leverage that incredible value to build beautiful, beautiful experiences. It's not subtractive.
As cavemen and women, we would blow air across our larynx and form words, and then we formed languages, and then we were able to write down the language, and then we were able to type the language, and then we were able to democratize it and print the language. And for those of you who suffered through DOS, we then had to code the language, and then when Apple came out, we got to point, and then when smartphones came out, we got to thumb. We will go back to our origin of the most intuitive form of communication, back to talking. That is the future OS.
Now, I know that bad things can happen. I'll give you an example. I had this great idea because everybody in this room, according to my belief system, needs an inflatable abdominal fitness machine, right? So 20 years ago, I invented the first inflatable fitness. It was awesome. I mean, I had it tested by the Orthopedic Research Organization. You could blow it up, and I think that's where you got most of the exercise. Now, never forget that it was a Sunday, and they had tested the infomercial for an entire week. And the producer called me, and the producer said, "Nick, check it out. I got news for you. All the data has come back in, and here's what we found. It's like a Hoover vacuum." I'm like, oh my God, they sold billions of Hoover vacuums. He said, "No, Nick, I think you misunderstand. It sucked and blew all at the same time."
So what is disruption? I think in order for you to take
innovation and disruptive innovation and apply it in your enterprise in a way that's meaningful, that delivers real value, we need to know what it is. And here's the secret. It's super simple. Disruption is nothing more than the speed of innovation. I found that the biggest problem is most organizations sort of see disruption, the word disruption, as kind of a unicorn. They believe it's a thing, but as we say in California, it's just squishy. It's amorphous and hard to describe. And the neat thing about it is that when we do this right, we improve quality of work life, we make it a more fun and interesting place for people to work, we do a far better job of gaining real actionable consumer insights, and we create more profitable, better businesses. We are using disruptive innovation to destroy lameness and replace it with something that my 13-year-old daughter would call delicious. Most of us believe, I think today, that change is coming. You know, the truth of the matter is, change is here already. Disruption is the best thing that could happen to everybody in this room. It is the ultimate mother of all quivers that we can pull from to innovate. This is the stuff that innovation is made out of, and it is so vast and it's so exciting. And once we understand it, we can really, really apply it in a very practical way. I would really be excited about, and I know that it'll be an equal and fair service to others. I love that. It actually just gave me goosebumps. I love that. But I think that if disruption is the problem, and of course it is, then the answer is innovation.
All right. Let us welcome Mr. Nicholas Webb. How are you doing tonight?
Great. Thanks for having me. I watched that video and it's like my producer made it look like I was a superhero. It was awesome.
You are a superhero.
Yeah.
Look at your history. Look at what you've done. Think about the lives you have changed that you know about, and think about all the ones you have not known about that you've touched, right?
It's a great privilege to do the work I do. That's all I'll say. I'm just there. I'm a humble servant here, and it's beautiful to do this. It really is.
Well, thank you for being part of the show. And what I call this show, it's the Follow the Brand show. It is the Nicholas Webb brand that first attracted me to you. I saw what you were doing. You aligned so much with my audience and what I've been doing for a very long time. That's working with healthcare professionals and also information technology. You understand where this industry of healthcare needs to change. But before we go into that discussion, I want to know what made you even get into this industry to become a speaker? How did you, what happened in your life along the way that got you to be where you're at?
Well, when all my friends were watching football and following baseball and that kind of thing, I was listening to Brian Tracy and Les Brown, who I had the privilege of connecting with. And Brian Tracy was now, somebody who blurbed one of my books. I mean, all of these superheroes of mine were speakers that were having impact on people's lives. And I thought, gosh, maybe one day I could possibly do that. And, there's 60,000 speakers. There's really about 5% of them that ever really reach meaningful success. So the odds were against me. But I just felt like that those amazing people had such an impact in my life that if I could do that for somebody else, that would be magical. And that's how it started.
Well, you're talking about 5%. So 95% of the people that are in your profession don't make it to the levels that you're at. What do you feel is the difference? What is your key ingredient that got you into that field?
I think that I had to understand the DNA of what it meant to do professional speaking. I have a very busy consulting practice, and initially speaking was sort of an adjunct to my core business. And frankly, it still is. But the one thing that I realized is that audiences really are demanding actionable novelty. What they really want from somebody is something that they don't already know, that's not in their industrial echo chamber. And they want it to be delivered in a way that is actionable, that they can apply it to their job or their organization immediately. And then you have to shrink wrap it with fun and with energy. And you have to be able to connect with people. You know, the best advice I ever got on speaking is that when you stand up on that stage and you approach speaking with a loving heart, it sounds corny. That is when you are a different person. That's when you're a different speaker. When you are there truly as a humble servant. You know, so many speakers do this because they want attention, right? Or they want to be famous, or they want people to listen to them or whatever. Those are all the wrong motivators. And yet that's really what brings most people into speaking. They want attention. I mean, look, I've got a 17-year-old daughter. I have 4 kids. I have a 17-year-old daughter still at home. So I have no self-esteem at all. Right. So for me, I have to approach this in a way where I can't be bad on stage. Right. I just can't. And I've learned the DNA of what it takes. And that is to really, really spend the time to understand the unique and special differences of each and every audience so that you can deliver beautiful, beautiful messages that really matter to them. And what's great for me is I get emails and I get phone calls afterwards saying, hey, Nick, I applied exactly what you talked about. And it's been transformative in our organization. That I'll tell you, I can't tell you how beautiful that is, but that's really what keeps me doing this for sure.
Well, I want you to help me understand something. I mean, take me back to that point in time in your career when you really were first getting started, that first big break, that first time you really nailed it for an audience. What were you feeling? What happened to make that transformative leap?
Well, I think that the hard part of this is, in fact, they say that that speaking is a greater fear than death. Which statistically, that's true. In other words, you'd rather be in the casket than being the one delivering the eulogy. Statistically, that's pretty impressive, right? And so why is that? The reason psychologists have discovered that speaking is such a great fear, public speaking, is that it's embarrassing yourself on a wholesale level, right? Because if something goes wrong on stage, I mean, I've had audiences of tens of thousands of people. It's pretty bad, right? So very memorable, right? And so the thing I think that for me is, as Les Brown says, anything worth being great at is worth being bad at, right? You've got to be willing to be bad at something in the process of, and that doesn't mean not preparing. It doesn't mean putting the heavy lifting in. It doesn't mean getting the training. It doesn't mean that. It means even under the best circumstances, things can go wrong. And when it goes wrong on stage, it can be bad. I can remember doing a lot of talks, you know, in the few $1,000s for a speaking engagement level. And I got to be really good because I was at smaller events. I began to see the cause and effect of what worked and what didn't. I'm obsessed about following other good speakers or great speakers and even stand-up comedians and improv. And I finally got the chance to speak at a huge Blue Cross event. It was tens of thousands of the most important people in the industry that I've been in for 40 years. And I can remember I shared the stage with Jeffrey Ling, who at that time was the director of the innovation area of the Department of Defense, and other great people. And I remember nailing it. I mean, people just loved it. I could feel the connection. And that was the beginning of my real professional career. I went back and did a post-mortem and really reflected on why it worked so well. And I've continued, that was 30 years ago, I've continued to build upon what I learned from there. But it's really, what I love about being good at speaking is it's something that's really hard to be good at. It really is, because you can't just be the talking head on the stick, right? I followed a speaker at an event a few weeks ago, and it was just a conveyor belt of information. And it was sad, and I felt bad for the speaker. I felt bad for the audience, and it's just not that easy, right? You have to go big, and you have to have passion. You have to believe in the stuff you're talking about. It has to be part of your DNA, your religion. When it's that, and you know that you're impacting that audience, man, I'll tell you, it is something else. And again, I say it over and over again. I tell my wife this every single day. The first thing I do before I put my feet down and get out of the bed is I give thanks for the incredible honor that I have to serve other people. It's amazing. And when you can connect who you are with what you do,
Yes,
that is a great life, right?
Oh, without question. You've already answered my question. I was thinking about, like, what is the big problem that Nick solves for other people? And you are talking it. I mean, it's one thing that to be inspired, be inspirational. People aspire to those levels, but to be the very essence of inspiration that's infectious, magnetic, and resonates with your audience. Like you were saying, you feel it. It's almost like being in a stadium, like when your favorite football team or sporting team is playing a game and they finally scores the winning touchdown, that roar, that release of all those endorphins and emotions and feelings and all of that, just boom. That's got to be very motivational.
That's incredible. I mean, honestly, I feel like the thing that's frustrating is I get off stage and I'm like, that was 5 minutes, but I'd been talking for an hour keynote and it literally felt like 5 minutes. My feet didn't touch the stage the entire time. And again, it's not about me. It's not about my performance. It's not about my content. It really is about this beautiful connection I can see as I look out into the audience and I see smiles and nods of confirmation and just sort of, I don't know, it's hard to describe. There's some magical connection that when it happens, it's a beautiful thing. And, you know, I have a sort of a mission associated with my speaking. I want to help leaders understand how to leverage this transition of chaotic innovation, how to be amazing leaders in a time of hyper complexity. And I have a book that I actually wrote with my 23-year-old son called Lucid Leadership. And it really talks about our need to understand the external world much better. Everybody's talking about Chat GPT, like AI is a new thing. I mean, I ran an AI lab for 5 years. I've been involved in it for 2 decades. Buoy Health and other technologies in AI have been around forever. It's just above sea level now. But the truth of the matter is these leaders should have already had an AI strategy and a metaverse strategy and a future readiness plan and so on. So I think my big mission is to help leaders get to a better place, to understand this transition that we have taken from, you know, when I started my career, I started 40 years ago as a medical technologist. And right, I began, one of my first technologies is a microsilicone implant that goes into the vertical puncta for the treatment of ocular surface disease.
Well, wait a minute. So that first, when we saw in the video, that was not your first invention. I know you have 40 patents. That was not.
Yeah. Okay. Right. And I invented one of the first wearable technologies before there was a functional internet. I developed, and it may sound great, but the truth of the matter is I lived as a medical technologist in a time of symmetry, of what we call symmetrical innovation. And that kind of ended about 20 years ago. And symmetrical innovation said things were pretty slow and the change that we were experiencing was pretty small. It was symmetrical. It was predictable. It was linear. And so I got to be a rock star back then because it was the truth of the matter is, it was easy to be an innovator when I was an innovator. But then stuff started to change. And about 10 to 20 years ago, depending whose matrix you want to use, we entered the realm of disruptive innovation. And disruptive innovation is when things got really, really big, the size of change got really big, and the speed of change accelerated. It's super accelerated. Well, Today, we're in this new era of what I call chaotic innovation.
Yeah.
And the difference between chaotic innovation is it's amorphous, it's asymmetrical, it's disparate. In other words, chaotic innovation is a blur. And my mission today is to get leaders in healthcare to lean into the blur. Because when you lean into it, because I live in the blur every day, it's amazing. Because never before has there been better ways for us to improve access. If you've watched my my award-winning documentary film, The Healthcare Cure, there are two messages that I wanted to get in that film. One is that we can leverage technology and we can leverage different practices so that everybody has access to healthcare. We need to be able to serve underserved communities, not just with access to healthcare. We need to serve underserved communities with access to health. Because we think darting them with medicines and having lots of levels of intervention is fairness, but it's not fairness and equity. What they need is the same thing I get, which is concierge health and preventative health. They should have access to live outside of a food desert and to have access to these things. The other thing that we have to look at is the big shift. The big shift in healthcare is the transition that we will be making over the next 8 years from a hyper focus on diagnosis and intervention to one of anticipation, using leveraging AI and other technologies, anticipating disease processes well before they become lethal, expensive, and acute. And so those are the two big areas where we're going to see some major, major changes. And when I can get executives to get outside of their corner office and to really see what's going on, then they can use this stuff to really impact the quality of patient care, to attract and keep the best employees, and to run superstar enterprises.
Now you're bringing up some major thought points. This is the biggest thing. It's hard to see when you're in that corner office what is really happening at the street level. What's impact, not only at the patient level, and you talked about this, but at the person that's delivering the care. Right there when it's happening. What is the happening? You talked about friction. There's so much friction in healthcare delivery that it's like I'd rather be sick than go through this minutia and all these things that are happening in the setting of healthcare until it's a critical moment. I don't know if all of our leaders are really seeing what's happening. You mentioned something that really resonated with me. And you say, well, you look at the mission, vision statement of a lot of healthcare institutions, and they tell you that, man, we deliver stellar care, and that's the messaging that goes out, right? And then when you do an actual real survey, you said it was like 7% of the surveyed population came back with that same assumption.
Right.
3%. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, look, I mean, we're in a time of hyper-consumerization, and the average health system doesn't realize that that is the case. There was a great study that was done by Bain where they interviewed 330, I believe, CEOs. And they basically said, hey, give me a rating, give me a 5-star rating. How do you rate yourself? Well, I mean, 90% of them roughly came back and said, 5 stars, we're awesome, right? And then Bain thought, geez, that's a big number. Let's go back and see what your actual customers think. They did that and found that only 7% agreed. And the problem is health systems and in healthcare in general, we chase HCAHPS scores, and it's really a super bad idea. We're in a time of hyper-consumerization, and we need to understand, first of all, I am not a believer in patient survey data. It's fractional, it's incomplete, and it never provides the insights that you need to drive innovations. You may have seen just this week on LinkedIn, for the 8th year in a row, I've been rated as one of the top 30 global gurus in the area of customer experience. My books, one of my books that I really am proud of is my book, What Customers Hate, just was listed as, seems like an infomercial, was listed as one of the top business books for 2022. Here's what we discovered. Yeah, let me give you some examples. There used to be these creatures, I say that in a friendly way, called orthodontists, right? I have 4 kids, and 3 of my kids went to an orthodontist because at that time we're living in California, and under state law, you can't have children with crooked teeth, right? So then my youngest daughter, it was time for braces. Now, keep in mind that experience was not a great experience. It was super expensive. It was friction laden. It was impersonal. It was transactional by nature. So we decided to go with one of the online programs called Smile Direct. So Smile Direct sends you this beautiful impression kit. They send you your braces in advance. It's roughly a third of the price of what the orthodontist charges. And the experience was completely friction-free, beautiful. And I saved $5,000, right? That's the future of healthcare. They can take a look at technologies like Opternative. Used to be we'd have to wait 2 weeks on average to get to see an optometrist. Then we would go to the optometric practice and we'd wait for an hour to get exam to go through refraction. And then we would get the last touch point in those experiences. We would get spanked with, what I call the cashectomy, where they try to sell you Gucci frames, right? But today you can go on Webb on apps like Opternative, and they get a 98% customer satisfaction rating, and you can do a refraction online. Now, I've been in ophthalmology my whole life. I'm still a big believer of going to an ophthalmologist or an optometrist. They're amazing. Their work is incredible. My point is that bad practices that are not giving good experiences, they are being displaced by other highly consumerized solutions. This trend is going to continue in a very, very big way. And I think that and that's why we really need to realize that we're not, here's the problem in healthcare. We have been in the transaction of healthcare for so long. We're having a hard time believing that we have to deliver experiences, not transactions. Patients have no way of knowing. Think about Starbucks. Yeah. Starbucks for years have delivered mediocre coffee at a high price. With all due respect to that, in my opinion, all due respect to them, but they used to deliver a really beautiful experience. But then they started to scale and they got busy, and then they kind of turned into the transaction of overpriced mediocre coffee. And then here on the west side of the country, Dutch Brothers came in. Dutch Brothers also sells, in my opinion, mediocre, high-priced coffee. But if you go by a Dutch Brothers, you'll see there's a line around the block, oftentimes police directing traffic. The only difference between the two, in my humble opinion, is the experience. And look at what's happening with all of the disruptors from Amazon to Apple to the list goes on that want to own the patients. We are going to get destroyed by consumer-centric organizations if healthcare doesn't realize we really are at a point of hyper-consumerism.
I love the analogy and what you brought up. We've got to get our handle around the brand. I come from the IT world, a lot of the telephony world, and I come from that world where, AT&T was a monopoly. So you really didn't have to do a lot of branding. Everybody had to use your service regardless, right? And I think hospitals are in that same world. They've been around, a lot of them have been in the community for a number of years. Everybody knows where we're going to go. So they just kind of do some branding, but they don't really put value into it to understand this is the future of your consumer state, your patient state. And if you don't put enough emphasis on the experience that your population is going through, they will go somewhere else.
Yep.
So before we continue on, we're going to go to a break. Then we're going to come back. We're going to really hone in on this healthcare, this information technology, things that you're doing, things that you're seeing as far as innovation in this space, what can happen. And we're going to learn a lot more about what you do from a business standpoint. How about that?
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Grant.
Thank you.
Well, look, healthcare in the United States is, 19% of our gross domestic product. We spend almost $4 trillion a year on healthcare. It's the biggest business in the United States. And that's why it garners so much attention. If you look at what we spend at the federal level on Medicare and on care for the ill in this country, and certainly on the commercial side, and nowadays in the United States, about 40% of Americans have high deductible insurance plans. it is a big business. And I would tell you, Grant, that it's a big business that we need to get better at. You know, today, the amount of transparency that we have in healthcare today is more than it's ever been. So when it comes to things like being able to get online and look at provider ratings, commentary on experience, those types of things, we have more of that at our fingertips today than we did 10, 15, or 20 years ago. Reverend Martin Luther King, I mean, who embodied equality greater than him, right? I mean, here in the United States, we love to credit our forefathers. You know, all men are created equally. But I got news for you, man. I mean, if you listen to my mom, right, it goes beyond, it goes way before that, right? That comes from God. All of us are made in the image of God, right? So how in the world do we select this group are the haves and this group are the have-nots?
You know, I'd like to make a pretty bold proclamation here today, and that is healthcare is really sick. In fact, I would suggest that healthcare is in critical condition.
For a lot of doctors, they forget it and they miss it. And for patients, it saddens me that they don't get that with their doctors because so many doctors forgot why.
I had the opportunity to travel to Dublin, Ireland, to share my ideas to the world about all that I knew about how the next bright, shiny object was going to really solve all the problems. And at the end of that presentation in Dublin, Ireland, I met Dr. Power. He came up and interrupted a dialogue I was having with 15 people and just said, Nick, it's about the patient.
Yeah, it's very interesting in medicine that you could describe as there being both an IQ piece and an EQ piece. There's a scientific piece and there's an artistic piece. It's really interesting when you're trying to get into med school in the first place. It's pretty much that they're talking about IQ.
And how ironic that 2015, diagnosed with cancer, major surgery, and every step of the way, more and more treatment, I learned to live. I learned not to take every day for granted. I learned about the healthcare system too. And I learned that it's not an easy place to maneuver and that there's a better way to deliver healthcare.
And if the COVID crisis is the opportunity for us to finally get this right and shift out of a disease treatment model into a disease prevention model, then 2020 will have been worth it.
And it's been a very exciting time. In the last 10 years, from a technology perspective, during the whole COVID years, the acceleration of technology and the use of technology really at the bedside, there's never been another time like it. But in many ways, what we do in healthcare IT, we are assisting those nurses, we are assisting those doctors to provide better care, quicker care, more efficient care. Being able to do telemedicine in-house to treat our own patients, moms that couldn't see their baby in the ICU, dads that weren't able to be part of the delivery of their baby or visitors with their loved ones during that time. We had to start making internal, within our four walls, telemedicine solutions for doctors and nurses to be able to see patients outside the room without having to don and doff PPE?
The 5-star BDM LinkedIn social selling course can help you stand out and attract the right connections and opportunities. We will help you professionally create your profile, provide personalized recommendations for improvement, and help you create and share engaging content to help you showcase your skills and expertise. Our 5-step course makes connecting with industry experts, finding job opportunities, and building meaningful relationships easy. Social selling can be an effective way for you to generate leads and close deals, but it does have its challenges. Our course will help you solve the problems associated with digital networking. If you need help personalizing your outreach and messaging, which can lead to low response rates and a lack of engagement. If you need help targeting the right prospects, this course is for you. You will improve your social selling with the 5-star BDM LinkedIn Optimization Social Selling course. Listen to what others have said about 5-star BDM.
Grant, I'll tell you why I'm here, right? I'm here because I love your brand. When we started chatting on LinkedIn, we connected. I checked you out and I go, man, this guy knows what he's talking about.
You were definitely instrumental in helping to shape that knowledge of who I am. Because at first I thought, well, I am an actress. I am a writer. I am a producer. I am a speaker. And so I said, well, I must be a creative communicator. I know that there is a narrative thread here, but you nailed it when you said you are a storyteller. So you brought it all together in this cohesive title.
Sign up today to improve your social selling opportunities. All right, we are back. So, Nicholas, love the commercial. You kind of framed the condition of healthcare in the United States. I want you to help us with some wisdom. Our audience is composed of a lot of healthcare leaders, CEOs of hospitals throughout the United States. I want to give you the mic and with some wisdom, help them understand where they're at now and where things are going and the change they need to make.
Yeah, well, in my consulting practice, we work with some of the top brands in healthcare. I just, I think it's a month and a half ago, trained 74,000 Mayo Clinic employees on happiness, right? And Mayo Clinic, a genius organization that put joy and happiness as an enterprise priority. I've worked with just about everybody from the Mayos to the Kaiser Permanentes, and the list goes on and on. Here's where I think we are right now in terms of the industrial side of healthcare, is that one of the biggest and most exciting things that you can do, the low-hanging fruit for 2023, without a doubt, is HX. And if you don't have an HX strategy right now, it's costing you a fortune. I just spoke, and I don't want to mention the name of them, I just spoke for a regional health system, fair, not gigantic, I would call it a small health system. And they went from spending $2 million a month on traveling nurses to spending nearly $12 million a month on traveling nurses. And they just assumed that's the way it was going to go. And when you think about HX, or human experience design, there's two things that we have to do. We have to address hyperconsumerism, and we have to address the challenges in the workforce. But you've got to do them both at the same time. If you've ever gone to, the Department of Motor Vehicles and got beat up by the person there that wants to make your life bad, you can see that usually it's because their life's not great. right? So when you have unhappy employees, they deliver bad customer experiences. And conversely, when we have really bad patient flows and we're overbooking and we have systems that are broken, then the other thing that happens is these bedside care caregivers are constantly being yelled at. They feel like they're an account agent at Southwest Airlines during Christmas, right? Every person they engage is mad because the system is so broken. So the best organizations realize that in order to attract and keep mission critical talent, which is the number one priority of every health system in the country today, or at least it should be, the way that you have to do that is through a formal HX strategy. And I do happiness hackathons. You can't do it with employee surveys. You can't understand your patient through patient surveys. There's a wide range of better insights that you have to implement to do this right. But I think that when I think about what's the most urgent, low-hanging fruit, it's the ability to really improve the quality of work life for these amazing people that show up every day to serve your mission. And then at the same time, that has a direct impact in the way in which you architect not patient experiences, but consumer experiences. Patients wait for an hour to see a doctor, consumers don't. And when you take a look at, Amazon's acquisition of One Medical, they didn't just buy a family practice business, they bought a concierge practice because they realized the future of healthcare delivery isn't the transaction of healthcare. That's what Starbucks does. They realize it's about the delivery of beautiful, thoughtful, customized human experiences. We need to do that for our employees and we need to do it for our customers, but we need to do it concurrently. That, I think, is a low-hanging fruit. Then, of course, the other two dynamics. One is the proper adoption of emerging technologies and connection architecture. And then lastly, your openness to new economic and new value models. Those are the three big ones that I focus on for 2023 with my executives.
Man, as I think through that, knowing how a lot of leaders, they have to prioritize is, how can I afford to do this? How can I pay for this type of transformation when my overall budget has been lowered due to the pandemic, due to a lot of other factors that are outside of my control, yet I understand I need to transform. What do you say to those executives that understand it? How do I do more with less?
That's a great question. I was in Florida. Again, I don't like to mention the names of everybody. It was one of the large board groups in healthcare where the entire audience were boards of directors for health systems. And they had panelists up. They had 3 panelists from across the country. And the question that was posed to the panelists is, how are you managing the costs associated with traveling nurses? Mm-hmm. The first panelist said, really simple. I went to my board and these were presidents and our CEOs. They went to their board of trustees and they asked for $30 million more. We need more money to pay the people that work there more money to keep them. Then they asked the next person, how did you do it? Same thing. In our case, we asked for $18 million from our board of trustees to be able to give raises to bedside care specific nursing. And then third panelist, same problem, roughly same numbers, $15, $18 million that they got from their board to throw at them. After the panelists, I went up to, after the panel session, I went up to each one of them. I said, gosh, this is intriguing. I'm going to learn something here. How much money did you spend? I know how much money you spent on keeping them there with money, but how much money did you spend on improving their quality of life? Mm. 0. Mm. I checked back with them about 3 months ago or 4 months ago, all 3 of them, and it turns out that the money trick didn't work. Like here where I'm at in Scottsdale, Arizona, one of the major medical system here needs to find 4,000 people immediately. The problem is Intel is building a massive operation here. It's the fastest growing county in the country. And guess what? They're leaving their nursing degrees to where they live this dystopic, horrible existence to go have a good career pathway. They get to go home at 5 o'clock. They're not exposing themselves to pathogens every day, right? And that's what's happening. So we just did a project that provided a $10.7 million return on our investment. take for an example, the one company I just mentioned. If we are able to achieve a 30%, which we can easily do, improvement in terms of their ability to attract and retain mission critical nursing talent, we can save them $3 to $4 million a year. And we don't charge $3 to $4 million for our work, right? They should expect a 5, 10, 20, 30, 40% return on their investment short term, but in perpetuity, it's in the tens of millions of dollars. So the real question is, how do you afford not to invest in addressing an emerging and catastrophic condition within your organization?
I want everyone listening to just take a deep breath. Think about what you just said. Think about how the landscape is changing. We have the oldest population we've ever had in the US, and they are the largest population. So there's not as many people to help with this aging population. So now you're going to have the gray tsunami at your door, and you don't have not even just enough people, you don't have the right work-life balance to be able to maintain a good experience. This is something to really think about. How do you utilize the different budgets that you have? And as you start thinking 3, 5 years out, what does this really look like? Let alone all the different advances we have in innovation and technology, but how are we going to use these things? Before you chime in on that, Nick, we're going to go to short commercial break. Then we're going to come back. We're going to answer that question. And then we're going to talk about the things that you're doing right now that you're making impact. How about that?
Sounds great. Thanks, Grant.
5-Star BDM, Brand Development Masters, is a professional consulting and advisory group keenly focused on business development services for the small to mid-sized business and entrepreneurs. Although every business is unique, they often share business development challenges that can be addressed through smart branding. Services include process improvement and operations, digital strategy and transformation, business intelligence, digital marketing, and personal branding. Our business and personal branding company has helped a number of professionals and organizations to optimize and grow. This results in more business, more opportunities, better reach, positive outcomes. Visit www.5starbdm.com today to learn more.
Are you looking to improve your LinkedIn profile and reach a wider audience? Social selling is an effective way for you to generate leads and close deals, but it does have its challenges. Some common problems we saw with social selling include lack of visibility. If your profile is not optimized or you're not actively participating in groups or sharing content, it can be difficult to get noticed on LinkedIn. Number 2, lack of personalization. Some businesses struggle with personalizing their outreach and messaging, which can lead to low response rates and a lack of engagement. Also, difficulty targeting the right prospects. It can be difficult to identify and target the right prospects on social media, especially if you don't have access to robust targeting tools. And number 4, outdated content. If your LinkedIn profile or content is not up to date, it can give the impression that you're not actively engaged on the platform or that your skills and experience are not current. And lastly, poor quality content and not leveraging video and picture to convey ideas. To solve these problems, the 5-Star BDM LinkedIn Optimization Social Selling Video course. Sign up today to improve your social selling opportunities.
Follow the Brand TV broadcast host, Grant McGaugh, as he visits with top executives and entrepreneurs to find out their secrets of success with their personal brand. Follow the Brand TV broadcast host as he focuses on brand development to build better relationships, bring value to your business, relationships, and career. You will enjoy listening to each episode that is tailored to speak to you directly. If you're looking for this type of clarity in terms of building your brand, you have tuned into the right station. Each episode will help you to shape a conversation in the 5-star BDM network of 20,000 professionals and become a springboard for your corporate engagement and business opportunities. Each guest will frame their story in the areas of personal branding, business development, career development, financial empowerment, and technology innovation. Grant McGaugh explains why he is the CEO and owner of his own professional career. Grant is an accomplished business leader and entrepreneur who wants to give back to individuals to grow their personal brand strategy. Tune in as he weaves his story about new possibilities, while to you exceed expectations. If you love storytelling, this show will make for fun.
All right. I hope you're having fun, Nicholas.
Absolutely.
Well, let's continue this conversation because I know we're in your sweet spot now. We've framed a lot of discussion around the problem. The problem is massive. What are you doing to help mitigate some of these issues?
Well, unfortunately, I'll speak at an event. There'll be 150 CEOs that have these real problems. They're super fixable, and everything I have to say is so easy to ignore, right? Mm-hmm. Because the problem is that in a time of differentness, we need newness, which is another word for innovation. That people are so, especially in healthcare, they're so committed to legacy ideas of operationalization rather than innovation. And unfortunately, that's the barrier that I constantly fight against. So what I try to do with my consulting practice and my busy speaking practice is to really be as emphatic and as value driven as I possibly can to really get the point across that, we've been talking about healthcare being a burning platform for years. And the problem is, I remember hearing that 40 years ago when I started at Star Surgical, and it never burnt. So we all assumed that the burning platform's fake, but it turns out that the flat platform has in fact burned already. And that for organizations that really want to be relevant in a time of chaotic innovation, they really need to step away from a lot of the outdated ideas, legacy ideas about everything. And in particular, the one I like to focus on right now, because it's easy to fix and it's emergent, is the way in which we attract and keep talent and the way in which we significantly improve the satisfaction of patient experience.
Mm-hmm. So we got a lot of work to do, some thinking to do, because the landscape, as I said earlier, is changing. You cannot fix a old problem with old ideas when you've got a whole new playing field. It's a whole new playing field that's rapidly changing in front of our faces. I'm starting to become part of that group. Like, wow, I'm actually looking at probably using Medicare or whatever they have left, as I go into retirement. What does that look like? We have this gigantic discussion around it. Now, this is an impending problem that's occurring. You've got great ideas. You've written many, 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 many books. And of those books, as you start looking at this landscape and you start seeing all these things, the right thing they should do. Give us some other innovations that you like. I know you talked about it. I just listened to this just today. You're talking about some innovations that are coming out that are game changers, that are literally going to change the game of healthcare delivery.
Yeah, I think some of the most exciting is the anticipatory patient and the anticipatory health system or hospital. On the patient side, and we've been doing a lot of this work in our own lab, is you'll notice that Apple really wants to be in our ear. Right? Amazon wanted to be in the Echo, wanted to be, because we've transitioned to this new communication. The new operating system is mouseless and monitorless. It's human voice, and that's getting better and better. But the real thing that I think is most interesting is that wearable technologies like wrist technologies are, so 2021, as my daughter would say. The truth of the matter is getting data from a wrist is a really bad idea. It's just not the right place to do it. The right place to get data is in the ear. And the future, and this is going to happen, I would say in 5 years, if you want health insurance or if you want insurance from .gov, you're going to be required to have an in-ear monitoring device. And that device will monitor your core body temperature. We already know, and we've been doing it for years. We can get EEG data from the ear. We can get blood pressure. We can also get true gait and true movement because, they've done studies where truck drivers got more wrist movement than somebody that goes to the gym and puts their hands on the treadmill, right? So the wrist just isn't a good place to get good movement. We can see pre-tremor data. We can see things like possible neuropathology from head bob data. We can even use and incorporate into these in-ear technologies that actually are able to use breath AI, where it's getting the nanoparticles from the breath, which are actually extremely rich in biodata. We're seeing telemedicine systems now that'll be next gen telemedicine, where it uses the camera and it uses the microphone in a desktop, laptop, or smartphone to be able to use facial AI and head movement AI. Also, voice AI is incredibly powerful in terms of modulation and pitch and key and clarity of speech. So what basically is going to happen is that in the very near future, you will be monitored constantly. In fact, we're now getting pretty far down the line on transdermal blood sampling, where we can actually sample blood in real time. And so we're going to be able to sample your blood. We're going to be able to know your pulse oximetry, your blood pressure, everything. And that is all going to be fed to the black box of AI. And AI is going to understand the disparate meaning of these signals and is going to dispatch you to where you need to go, how you need to change your life. And the other thing that's important about it being in the ear is that it'll be talking to you. You walk by Krispy Kreme, it'll say, bro, don't go in there. So yeah, I mean, it's exciting and it really will save lives. It'll reduce costs. And I think it's going to provide access to communities that haven't really had historical good access. In the area of enterprise anticipatory AI with hospitals and clinics, most people don't realize it, but most of the major health systems have digital command centers, and they're able to monitor patient flow in ED departments and everywhere. In fact, I'll be speaking for one of the large associations of contractors and designers for health systems here in a few weeks. And one of the things that's really interesting is we're building in flexibility. We're building in, systems that morph. We're doing decentralization of healthcare with things like med cottages. So there's so much technology that's happening. I think that there are two types of executives in healthcare today. There are the latent individuals that are committed to hanging on to legacy with a death grip. And then there are, older executives. I mean, I'm going to be 65 in a few months. I can't imagine. I mean, I'm still building stuff with Raspberry Pis and printing things off of a 3D printer in my office. I run a technology lab still. Just because we're old doesn't mean we have to not continue to learn. Sure. But we have to apply these new principles and these new technologies in a thoughtful way.
Well, age is as they used to say, it's nothing but a number. You got to remember people living longer. And so some of the paradigms that we've had around, hey, 65-year-old, you're done, probably is not the case. You're probably going to be very, very viral for a long period of time unless you have detriments in your diet and exercise and other things. Yeah. So these things can help us live longer. I just popped in my head this idea, like if this is in your ear, it's monitoring you, and it's starting to see some of the vital signs that are happening before you do anything. You got a mobile health unit that's coming to your house and immediately give you care without you having to do anything. I could see that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about right now, when my youngest daughter first got her driver's license, we had the option of plugging in a module to her car to monitor her rates of acceleration, her compliancy to posted signals, her rate of deceleration, because it has an accelerometer on it. So we were able to cut her insurance in half just by allowing the insurance company to monitor her for just 90 days. That's the same situation. You don't have to get monitored if you think the government's tracking you or the insurance company. But if you want to save a lot of money And if you want the benefits of the life-saving, for an example, what the number one symptom is that you have a serious cardiovascular condition? Death. You die. You die. That's the symptom. And it's the end of the road, right? Well, when we can start looking at all these disparate data signals, we can anticipate really, really serious conditions before they become lethal and very expensive. I think it's beautiful. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. It will be an in-ear technology that's combined with both implantables in some cases. People that have diabetes and other conditions that really need, continuous blood monitoring with higher degrees of accuracy may in fact get implantables. They're very low trauma to the body. There's almost no downside, and they work really, really good. And they can save lives and improve the convenience of the way in which we take care.
Well, I'm looking forward to those innovations that are needed. I'm sure we have to look at human adoption rates. But you can see that if it makes sense, people will adopt and make the changes. They'll weigh it out and say, okay, this is a good or bad thing for me. This has been incredible. Before we let you go, we're at the top of the hour. I want people to know, number one, what you got going on, what you got coming up, and then how to contact you.
Yeah, so my speaking business is simply nickwebb.com with 2 B's. My consulting practice is goleaderlogic.com. Right now, my most recent books are One Step Ahead, which is a book I'm real excited about. It's on how to leverage innovation to drive growth. Lucid Leadership, which was really fun for me because I got to write it with my 23-year-old son, Chase. And it really talks about the multi-generation ideas about how we manage hypercomplexity in business. How we manage the outside complexity, how we manage our internal cultural complexity, and how we manage our own sense of self-awareness. Happy Work is my book on how to run organizations that attract and keep great talent. What Customers Hate, it's a best-selling book on really how to drive unbelievably happy customers and to reinvent your organization to just drive scalable and predictable growth. And then, of course, my book on the future of healthcare, the healthcare mandate. Those are my most recent books. I think I have a total of 12, but these are the ones that have been out over the last 3 years or so. But yeah, what I've got going on is more of the same. I think I'll speak at 60, 70 events this year around the world. I usually do about 8 major consulting projects a year for great companies to find ways to really get them to a better place.
Well, I see why you are in demand. You are a wealth of knowledge, experience, and mostly wisdom. You've lived it, and you can see a better future. And I really like the fact that, again, you chose to come on Follow the Brand to talk with us. This has been wonderful. I want to thank you again for being on the show. And I hope you had some fun, Nick.
Grant, you make me look good. I don't usually get to hang out with the cool kids. So this is good stuff.
Well, thank you very much. You have a fantastic night. Enjoy your family. And until next time, I enjoy everybody in your audience. And I want them to tune in to all the episodes. You can see them on my podcast at www.5starbdm. That is B for brand, D for development, M4masters.com. And you can see all the episodes of all the Follow Brand TV on our YouTube channel. So thank you very much. Good night.
Thanks, Grant.
LinkedIn Optimization Social Selling Video Course will help you focus on personalizing your outreach and messaging to better connect with prospects. In module number 1, the foundation, we will help you create high quality, valuable profile that will attract and engage. In module 2, the story, optimizing your LinkedIn profile to make sure it is complete, accurate, and visually appealing. In module number 3, the experience, using your targeting tools and research to identify and reach out to the right prospects. In module number 4, engagement, establishing a consistent follow-up process to nurture leads and build relationships over time. And lastly, in number 5, execution. Understand the metrics to help you measure your brand effectiveness. By addressing these challenges and implementing best practices, you will improve your social selling with the 5-star BDM LinkedIn Optimization Social Selling course. Listen to what others have said about 5-star BDM.
Grant, I'll tell you why I'm here, right? I'm here because I love your brand. When we started chatting on LinkedIn, we connected. I checked you out and I go, man, this guy knows what he's talking about.
You were definitely instrumental in helping to shape that knowledge of who I am. Because at first I thought, well, I am an actress. I am a writer. I am a producer. I am a speaker. And so I said, well, I must be a creative communicator. I know that there is a narrative thread here, but you nailed it when you said you are a storyteller. So you brought it all together in this cohesive title.
Sign up today to improve your social selling opportunities. Hey everyone, it's Grant McGaugh, CEO of 5-Star BDM and host of the award-winning Follow the Brand podcast and TV series, where I help you to build a 5-star brand that people will follow. My genius is personal brand development through intelligent communication and helping you achieve your business and career goals. I am a requested speaker on digital technology and brand development issues. I want to work with you to increase the value of your current opportunities while attracting new ones. Every one of you is unique, and we all share challenges that can be addressed through smart branding. As a super connector, I work with you as an executive coach to guide you along the complicated business and career development road, providing the enhancement tools and information you need to succeed. Together, I will help you succeed in today's challenging business climate. I will evaluate and measure your progress. Best of all, I am right alongside you every step of the way. Build the brand called you. Genius.